So what I'd like to do is I'd ask you a couple of questions about yourself and about what you do and some of your memories from having taken chemistry and what you might actually use in your current career. Okay, let's see how it goes.
Well, just don't ask me too many hard questions about chemistry.
I will only ask questions that I think you're going to answer successfully. I'm completely confident about that. So thank you. So can you begin by telling me your name and a little bit of your educational background and then what it is that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so my name is Beth Grávalos. I have a bachelor's degree in anthropology and Spanish. I have a master's degree in anthropology, and I'm currently working on my PhD in anthropology. And I am an anthropological archaeologist, which is a wordy way to say that I study artifacts and archaeological sites to understand social and political questions, social, political, economic questions in the past. So I'm looking at material remains to try and understand past societies. And currently I am a research fellow at the Field Museum, which means that I have the freedom to conduct my research there for my dissertation, for my PhD.
So why in the world am I interviewing you for Gen Chem? My heart gave a little jump when you said materials for a second. And so why is it that, what is it that you do that involves chemistry right now?
So I do a couple of things with chemistry. Because I study artifacts, I work in a lab at the Field Museum called the Elemental Analysis Facility. And we specialize in studying the geochemical composition of inorganic artifacts. And we do this because if we're looking at an assemblage of objects, different objects, we want to know how they relate to each other compositionally to understand how different the artifacts are from each other. And in doing this, we're trying to understand, were these objects produced in the same way in the past using similar raw materials that perhaps came from the same geographic location. And so we're really interested in trying to relate the material composition of the object to a space, to a place, in order to track down relationships between different people in the past.
Can you give me an example of one of those, either objects or materials or something one notch more specific?
Yeah, so I study pottery, and I study it to a fairly minute detail, more than most people probably would be interested. But I'm I'm trying to understand the composition of the clay that was used to make the pottery, because I want to know if people living in village A are using the same raw material resource on the landscape that people living in village B are using. And if they are using the same resource, I want to try and understand, well, are they using the resource differently to create different objects? Or if they're not using the same resource, why aren't they sharing it if it's one that they can both utilize? And so from there, I'm extrapolating, or I'm interpreting what the social, political, or economic context is of the production, and also trying to determine maybe these two groups are trading objects.
And so when you say objects, you're talking about pieces of pottery, pieces of utensils they might use, those sorts of things. Is that generally what that means?
Yeah, so I study people who were alive about 2,000 years ago, and I work in Peru. So 2,000 years ago, people in Peru didn't have a written language. So the primary way that we can understand those groups is through objects. And so, yeah, like I might be looking at cooking pots that people utilized in their homes, or I might be looking at fancy vessels, serving wares that people were using for feasting events, like specialized events. That if it's a fancy ware, maybe there are different groups that are trading them. If they're cooking pots, maybe people are just making them in their home communities. And even at the level of a village, like you can try and understand if different households are sharing resources. And so it's just a way for us, since we don't have written documents about these groups, and many of these communities have essentially been lost to history. It's just a way for us to try and identify what life was like for these people who lived there. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the chemistry that you use and what techniques you use.
Yes. So in our lab, we have a laser ablation inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer.
Can you say all that really slowly so that I can catch all the different words? There's like 7 words in that title.
I've gotten really good at saying it. It's a laser ablation inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. And so this is an instrument that is measuring the mass of different isotopes that are present in the object that we're analyzing. And the laser is an essential part of this because it means that it's basically a non-destructive technique, because you can put the artifact in the chamber where the laser ablates, like
what does ablate mean?
It means that it is coming into contact with a very like surface level portion of the object, and it is vaporizing part of the material of the object, and then it is carried by gas, helium gas, into the mass spectrometer to be read, to figure out what elements are present in the object. And not only which elements are present, but in what quantity.
Right. So it's a pretty useful technique because it gives you really gives you an insight into the actual compound and also how much of it there is.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's essential for us because that's how we are differentiating the objects or relating them to each other, and therefore inferring raw material source and maybe trade relationships.
So, Beth, tell me, how can you be doing this much chemistry and claim not to have been a chemistry major? Tell me about your chemistry background.
So the last time I took a chemistry class was about 12 years ago. And I did okay. I didn't do great. And how am I able to do this? Well, I work very closely with a chemist who runs our lab, and through working with her directly, I have received hands-on training to use the instrument. And then from there, basically it's a matter of being good at using Excel and other statistical programs to try and figure out, to examine the data. Yeah, so it's more about, I suppose, having had the hands-on experience of using the instrument and then reading about how it works and how it applies to archaeological chemistry specifically.
Archaeological chemistry. That's an awesome phrase, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Is there anything, do you have any general pieces of advice for people who are starting off their university career, things that, like 2 or 3 really valuable things that this is your chance?
Yeah. So when I was an undergraduate, I fell in love with archaeology, but I didn't have any experience doing it. I had just taken courses. One thing I did, and I'm not sure what confidence I had instilled in me to do this. One thing I did was I basically would email anyone who I thought I could work with or who could teach me something. And I wasn't afraid to just like email somebody and say, hey, I see you're working on this project. Like, do you need help in your lab? Can I come and be an intern for you? And sometimes, you know, people don't respond, and sometimes they do. Usually they do, because you're saying, I'm interested in what you're doing and I'd like to help you do it. And I think that helped me a lot get different experiences in archaeology that got me where I am today. Just by reaching out to people and expressing interest. So I would say if you have something that you'd like to do or you'd like to experience, you should just reach out to figure out who's doing it and see if you can help them.
Yeah, that works no matter what your discipline is, right?
Yep.
Right. And one of the things I know about universities is they are filled with people who love their thing, whatever it is. And they often feel very lonely because they're the only one that loves it. And so if you have if you express an interest in somebody's thing that they are so passionate about, there's a good chance that you're going to find that they are receptive to, oh, there's a person who might be like me. I don't have to be so lonely for the rest of my life.
Exactly. Yeah. That's only one piece of advice, but I feel like
it's a good one.
It's a good one.
Good one, yeah. Let's cut it off there. Not oversaturate with the good. If you want more good advice, you're gonna have to reach out to Beth Grávalos and ask, hey, I really liked your interview. Do you have any room in your lab for me to come and be an intern? Right?
Exactly. This is just a plug for me to get people to work.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll share this with my students, and who knows what random emails you're going to get. They'll have to hunt you down. I'm not going to give them any contact information, but they'll be able to find you if they're motivated.
Okay, that sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Willie.